Ready. All right, so we're recording. So this is the City Council work session for Minnetrista, June 5th, 2023. Present and myself, Lisa Whalen, the mayor, council members present, Claudia Lacey, Peter Vickery, Ann McGregor, and Kathleen Refkin. And then staff is here as well. We have Director of Public Works, Gary Peters, Ali Paulfus, Director of Administration, City Clerk, Don Motzko, Jasper Krugel is our City Administrator, Brian Grimm, Finance Director, and then Sarah Sansala, who will be talking to us about all of our legal issues. So, with that, I'm gonna hand it right over to Sarah.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, as you're probably aware, the legislature and the governor passed legislation just recently, a couple weeks ago, legalizing cannabis. So this does have some implications for the city. I just kind of wanted to go over that and kind of get some direction from the council on where it wants to go from here, as there are a couple of options for you to consider, at least temporarily, until the state gets things set up with the cannabis regulation. So this is a presentation that I borrowed from my coworkers. We gave a webinar on this to a number of our clients on Friday, and I think some of the city staff were there as well. The first thing is the legislation, which is effective now, has created an Office of Cannabis Management. So it's called OCM. And they do have a website, but that's about it.
Yeah.
They have no regulations at this point or employees or anything like that. So it's going to take them a little bit of time to get organized. And they are actually going to be the ones doing the licensing of cannabis businesses. So that's something that the cities won't have control over. It'll be done by the OCM. But there are certain things that the city can regulate, and that's what we'll talk about. I'm also going to talk about the status of the THC edibles. That was kind of the talk last summer, and then other products that were legalized back in 2022. And then the next steps are basically what you may want to do here in response to all of this. So things I'm not covering today, which are going to be issues that we'll have to deal with at some point, is the impact on law enforcement and the criminal statutes, human resources questions. Obviously, there's employment-related issues that come up with cannabis, and then there will be some grant opportunities for cities.
I don't know if the clicker's working.
Isn't it working? You're clicking for me? Okay. As far as the Office of Cannabis Management goes, that will be a state agency, and it will be established July 1st, but they do have a website if you'd like to check it out. And then they're going to start hiring people, and then they have to actually make all the rules. Mm-hmm. And they're supposed to do that with an expedited process, and they're not going to be going through like a public hearing procedure. It's going to be like 30 days, but it's going to take them quite a while to get these rules put together. So we're thinking it'll be September or October before they get the rules going. And there's going to be 16 categories of licenses related to cannabis businesses, and some of them are listed here. And I can't even tell you what they all mean. There's so many of them, and then some have different components, and then some have the same components, and then it's really very, very complicated. But the city won't be licensing is kind of the key here to remember. So you don't kind of have to worry about that. They'll be telling you which ones you can regulate. And then there's also the lower potency hemp edible manufacturer and retailer. That's what's currently allowed right now with the THC edibles. And then there's also something, the medical cannabis cultivator, processor, retailer, combination businesses. Those are also allowed right now. So that's not going to change. As far as local governments, there's going to be, like I said, a very limited role in the licensing. So when there's within 30 days of receiving a copy of the application for a cannabis business license, the city must certify whether the proposed business complies with local zoning requirements, state fire code, and building codes. That's really all you get to do. You don't get to get into, who is it, and like you do with liquor, where you actually do a background check and a public hearing, or you're not going to do all those things for this cannabis. Yes?
Okay. So the state's going to issue a license for one of those businesses.
Yep.
And then the city only gets involved if the person wants a cannabis business license in the city.
Correct.
But do they have? But they won't get a license from the city.
Correct. They will register with the city.
They will just register.
They'll just register. So it says cannabis business license, but you really mean cannabis business registration. Is that right?
Yeah,
And
but
it's actually important. That's why I'm asking.
well, they're gonna, the state's going to get the license application. They're going to process it, and then they're going to say so and so has applied for a cannabis license in your city. Please, check the boxes that it's okay to have one in this location. And that'll probably be something that'll be processed by city staff. I guess we don't see. It's going to be basically yes or no. Does it meet the zoning requirements? Fire code and all that. So I don't think it's something that's going to have to necessarily go to the council. Although that's not saying that maybe if that's something the council wants, we can definitely look into that. But there's not going to be a lot of discretion
Okay,
there.
but here's the question. Let's say I go to the state and I get a license. And do I have to tell the state where I'm going to do it?
Yes.
I do.
Yep.
So I tell the state that I'm going to do it in the city of Minnetrista.
Yep.
But then the city of Minnetrista turns me down.
You're not going to have any
limited
discretion.
options for turning them down. Like
That's-
there's
that's
rules
what
on
I'm-
how close to schools and parks and that, but
Yeah.
otherwise we can't turn them down. It
Exactly.
sounds like
No.
we don't.
That's
we
what the
can't
governor
turn them
tried
Kind
down.
of like
all
the,
of us.
the issue we went through with the home with the. Oh yeah.
Yep.
It's the same.
It's like the community house.
Yeah.
They're allowed to do
So-
it. You can only minimally limit where. Does that include also because we have the ag district and everything? Does that include them becoming growers in? We don't have any say in any of that.
Nope,
either?
no say in any of that.
But that would be better than sellers.
I don't think any of it does.
You're gonna check the people that are going to be selling it at retail. So just like
Oh.
with liquor.
So we
and-
have no say in terms of growers.
No. If I'm right now in Minnetrista. If I live here, I could grow some in my backyard. The
Okay.
city has nothing to say.
Do the people around them have any say?
No.
That's just
All right, next slide. It's going to
So-
get more interesting.
I have one question. So
Yeah.
and maybe you get to it, but the number of licenses
Yeah.
per the community.
Yes, I do get to that.
That-
Maybe, should I wait? Or?
Well, is that
Right?
yeah?
It's based
I
on
think just maybe
population.
elaborate
Okay.
on if
Well-
there's. Oh, sorry.
No, okay, hold on. So, I just want to make sure that our questions, so we are not going to be licensing them. We can only weigh in to the state to say whether or not the location that they've said is okay. So,
Like if
okay.
they're selling it from a shed and the building official or the fire marshal says that that's not going to meet building code or fire code requirements because we're afraid it's going to burst into flames.
And we can also say it has to be, and there's certain regulations that was in here. It can't be more than 1,000 feet, or we can say
That's what you're going to
1,000,
decide.
right?
Yeah.
So we can do that. We can say 1,000 feet or whatever. I don't think we can go more than 1,000 feet.
No.
Yeah.
So there are what the legislature calls, which we don't know why they use this term. It's time, place, and manner regulations. So you're going to be able to regulate the hours of operation,
Right.
Because they're allowing them to sell up to 2 a.m. and you can dial that back. And they're letting them sell it at 8 o'clock in the morning. You can dial that
That's
back.
the same as alcohol, right?
Yeah.
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 So you can do that, and then you can do the, we don't want them in certain zoning districts, to an extent. It's kind of like the adult use. You can't just zone them out and say they can't be in any zone. They got to have somewhere they can go. And then, yes, you can put stipulations on them about, they can't be within so many feet of a school or a church, or there's certain things that I get to in the slides about
Can we
that.
stack those on top of each other, like the school and the park? Can we combine those to make it farther than or is it just one or the other?
I think
Like
you
the
could, it
schools-
would be all of, you could say within all these things, it can only be, a certain number of feet. But the legislator did put a limit on, you can't make it, I can't remember what it is, when we get to the slide it'll say, but there's only a certain distance that you can go out.
Right. And then I think that's with the house, with the rehabilitation houses or whatever you want to call it, you have to provide a space.
Yes.
So you have to provide the option, but you can limit it, and we did as severely limiting as possible. So it most likely what will happen though when it comes to sales, and I'm more concerned about the retail sales. That's more for me anyway. That's more of a concern. But at this point, there's going to be very few options, and we can hopefully limit
Yeah,
that.
because if we're only zoned for retail in very few places in Minnetrista in the first place. And then the places that are zoned for retail, there's that section.
There's certain places, but when you think about it, we don't have a lot of buildings that
Right.
they could be selling on, so they'd have to
They'd
build a
build their
building.
own building.
Guess what? There's a lot of places in Mound
Yeah,
that are
yeah,
empty.
yeah, exactly.
So my guess is,
Yeah.
and St. Bonnie, so my guess is if they're going to go into a community at this right now, until we develop more,
Right.
they're going to go to those communities.
I would disagree because Mound doesn't have a 7 or a 5.
That doesn't matter. But, I mean, maybe it does, but there's a lot
It's
of...
a terrible place for retail, so. I mean,
Right, on
I think
7.
they do better to, put up a
Right.
metal shed on
No, I
7
think
or
they'd be
5.
happier in Mound, actually. And I'm not saying that because I don't want them. I'm just saying that because there are so many places there already,
Right.
and they can just move it and become a store.
I thought I read in here that liquor stores could offer.
They can
So-
now sell THC edibles.
So could a grocery store sell those too, or?
Only
So the
a
liquor
full-on
store
liquor
packet
store.
those would be able to sell it, yes.
So that's something we have to think about, and that's kind of why I think we're looking at this right now.
Yes.
To see what we want to do.
And then one thing I will add too is you can limit the number of licenses for cannabis businesses.
Because
So
it's based on population.
it is, yeah. So it's 12,500. You have to have at least one.
You have to have one?
Well, you don't have to,
If
but
they-
you have to allow
say-
at least
yeah,
one.
to allow one.
The city doesn't have to
So we should
start
have a
one.
municipal one.
But then if Hennepin County
It's a municipal one. I think that's the best
has
way to regulate it.
enough where it turns out that there's one per every 12,500
Might
people,
not be
so
a
let's
bad
say they're all
idea.
in Minneapolis, then you don't have to have it.
That's an excellent point. Can you
Or say that
make
actually.
it be a municipal?
It could be a municipal one.
Yeah,
So
I
for
think
our city, because we're under 12.5, and then the question, and we'll get to that in a bit. So if we're under 12.5, we only have to have one.
Yes.
And if it's the municipal one, we can regulate that a little closer, a little bit better. However, then the 12.5 is the other question. Once we get over 12.5, how do we have to go to 25,000 before we have to add a second one?
What's going to happen between now and the time we get
Right.
to 12.5? A lot's going to happen.
Yeah.
People might be doing other stuff.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, and they didn't
So I'm
specify the
worried.
rounding
Or
on that
they'll read
either.
some of this research.
Because as a city, couldn't we just say, no, we have to get to 25 before we add another one?
so. It's 12.5, and then how we're reading it right now is that once you go over 12.5, then you have to add another one. So you don't get to wait till you get to 25.
that's going to be too
But
difficult.
the key is here.
Maybe not.
You're in Hennepin County, and there's another thing in the legislation that says if the county has enough of these per 12,500 people, so let's say they're all in Minneapolis and there's 1 million of them, well, then you don't have to have it. So
Right.
that
And that's
could,
why
I mean,
I'm
it could
thinking
happen.
it's going to be fairly. I can't even. Well, maybe McIntosh. That's the only one right now. Might want to sell, but I think they're going to be in
I'm saying
higher
Berlin.
density.
Okay.
They're going to be
That
in
would
higher
make
density.
sense. Actually, yeah.
Makes sense.
But okay,
Okay.
for,
We'll stop
We're
the
Claudia,
joking.
did you-
I'm so late.
To start our presentation.
Sorry.
Very sad.
I've got more. Are you done, Sarah? No.
Yeah, you
Just
can answer
getting
more
started.
questions.
You're just getting started?
We got more slides. Yep.
Oh, no, go. Well, or do I have to finish chatting now about my thoughts?
no, whenever you.
I think some of the slides. I mean, you've kind of answered some of the slides, so we'll be able to speak through maybe a few.
Okay.
Oh, one question I have. So there's like 16 business types, right?
Yep.
And 16 different licenses. So potentially there could be one of each of those 16. No, okay.
Just one
Just
cannabis.
one
So
type
it's
of those
cannabis
16.
business, and then
That's a good point.
yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
So you don't
It's
have
better
to
than
have one of
selling.
each. That would be
Honestly,
a lot.
Yeah, yeah,
we could
okay.
grow a request for
I know.
anything
I mean,
else.
just think about out there. They could grow it, and then they would have to move it out of the city.
It's a beautiful.
Okay.
Anyway, when I read this whole thing, we have relatives that live in Colorado, and a huge amount of relatives that live in Lyons and Longmont, which have completely been destroyed by this industry. It's completely a different place. I could underline and stress that enough. And so I decided to Google and go on their websites and say, how have cities regretted this? And now I see we can't do anything, except, but I think we really need to, basically it says, the driving, I've got all this for you to look at, all these statistics that are shocking. Some terrible things are up 180%. It's really shocking what I found last night. What they're saying is Colorado turns a blind eye. In fact, the Stanford lawyer that is considered the founding father of legalization in pot in cities, his name is Robert Corey. I pulled a huge article. He says he regrets it terribly, and it was a huge mistake, and it's wrought havoc on all these cities. So I would say, if we have to do this, let the city benefit from the tax revenue.
You can't do that either.
No, they control that too. They control how much tax revenue.
Control
Yep.
Yeah, it's all controlled. It's all.
It's a very strange thing as how that was worded in there, but how.
It's basically,
So I
we're
don't
forcing you to
understand.
do it, but we're taking the money, and you're going to get, 10% or something. It's like, oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Well, at least you're getting 10%.
Uh-huh.
If we have to have one, then
Somehow I got the impression it goes into a pool.
It goes into
Yeah.
a pool.
That's
Local-
what it
yeah,
is. It goes
20%
into a
is
pool,
of it, yeah.
and then
Special fund.
government gets
gets
that.
divided up amongst the
Yes.
cities.
Yeah.
But it's cities that have the businesses. If you don't have a
You don't have
business, you
business.
don't.
Then you don't
Yeah.
get anything, and you're just getting.
Well, I'm
zero
not quite sure
consequences
about
of it.
that
Okay,
because, obviously you're, well, I guess maybe because, the cities that have them are going to have to do like compliance checks, just like you do for tobacco and liquor. And they're required to do that, which, a lot of cities would say we didn't want this thing in the first place, and now we have to do compliance checks. So I think the money is going to be used to pay for things like that.
But it's not going to go to communities. Let's say we don't have any cannabis businesses here. It doesn't come to us, but we still have to deal with the fallout of potential fallout of the cannabis use.
Yes.
I mean, so that's the other drawback.
So, is there any way that the city, if we didn't do anything today, and 2 years go by, could we get shut out of it because all the other cities are doing it?
No. I mean, it's all, they're going to have all these rules and regulations about how the licensing's going to work and how the registration's going to work at the city. So that you'll still have to, when they come in, approve the registration and whatnot. It's just that you may want to, at this point, decide, where can these things go? Because otherwise they can go
They can go next to a school.
And, and then if you want to limit the time so they're not open until 2 a.m. or open at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday, that's the kinds of things you would not miss out on, but, those are the things you're kind of foregoing if you don't do anything. They don't plan on, I don't think any of this is really going to be up and running here anytime soon, so you have some time, and that's when we'll get into the moratoriums that you have, those choices you have to kind of put a pause on this till things kind of shake out.
Okay, and since we've already ruined your presentation, the moratorium aspect,
Yep.
January 2025. Okay, but that's not in stone. It's basically if somebody came in and we wanted to register them,
We could do it.
we could do it before January 2025.
Correct.
If the licensing is in
Yes.
ready to go.
Yeah, the
whatever,
state has to be ready.
Right.
So,
Right.
Okay.
So there's two moratoria. I don't know, Jasper, can you maybe, I don't know if we want to click ahead or how we want to do this.
Sorry.
That's okay.
We really apologize. Ruined her whole presentation.
We've kind of covered a lot of this.
So, did I go by it?
It's in the second half of the
Okay.
PowerPoint. There's a second PowerPoint file.
Oh, yeah, yep. Got
Yeah,
it.
because we had like 2 people doing this, so it was too much for one person to handle. So
And it is a lot. It's when you read. What we had. You read it and you're going, "Oh my God!"
oh, it's
I mean,
terrible
it's
to
just
read.
Terrible. It's horrible.
So right now, I understand the city. I wasn't here last summer, but you did not adopt a moratorium on the THC.
Correct.
So right now, THC edibles, like Mac and Thunes or whoever could, sell those. And eventually what's going to happen is cities thought they were going to be able to have a license for those, and some have actually put licensing in place. I think Richfield's done that and a couple of other cities. At this point, you could still do that with those, but then that would sunset at the beginning of next year when, the state takes over. So it's kind of like there's no point in licensing those at this point, but I mean, you do have that control. The other thing you could do, since you did wait, is you could adopt a moratorium now on the THC.
And all of it.
Yeah,
All of
so
it, yeah.
you could do a 1-year moratorium on the THC and then an 18-month moratorium on the cannabis. And then they would just kind of run concurrently, and then the THC would probably sunset once the state starts licensing that. And then the cannabis would continue for the 18 months, and then that would give you time to get your zoning and all your time, place, and manner restrictions figured out.
If we allow the edibles, does that cover the one cannabis business, or is that on top of the edibles?
That's on top. The edibles are separate. So they're in a separate statute right now, and then they're going to get moved over. So right now, you can go ahead and keep regulating those, and if you want to do licensing for them right now, you can. You can do a moratorium and just say we're not letting anybody sell them. And so that's like the gummies and then the drink. That's kind of what I figured out is what that consists of, the edibles. And it's a very low dose of THC. So the cannabis is higher doses of THC, and that's the marijuana and that kind of stuff. So basically the THC stuff will get merged into the cannabis by the beginning of next year. But until that point, if you wanted to say no THC edibles, we're putting a moratorium on that, you can do that because you haven't done a moratorium on that.
So what's in it for the city if we said yes to anything?
Yes, in terms
We
of the
can't
edibles.
say no.
Well, we can do moratoriums, but I mean, what are we losing out on?
If you do a moratorium or if you don't?
No, if we do a moratorium.
If you do a
Yeah,
moratorium?
what are we losing out on?
Nothing. I mean, I think that's what most cities are doing because we don't know. I know one city I represent is, they're very afraid. They're like, we don't think the state's going to get their act together. We don't want these businesses popping up, especially with that. They were worried about the edibles. And so they ended up they're putting a moratorium on right now for those. Just because they are like, basically nobody's watching because the state just transferred the edible stuff over to the Department of Health, I think in June. And then, eventually it's going to be transferred over to the OCM. So it's kind of just out there floating. So they kind of felt like, well, we just need to not have this stuff until they figure out what they're doing with the THC edibles. Yeah. And then with the cannabis, everybody's just saying we don't know enough about it. There's no regulations. They're actually going to come out with a model ordinance for cities to adopt. So then I think you can kind of plug in what you want for zoning, plug in what you want for times, number of licenses.
Also, it would have been great
district at 40 acres or more.
80 acres or more. Oh, we can do 75.
So that's not out yet. The state's regulations aren't out yet. So, I mean, if you were to say right now, let's do a cannabis, ordinance, it'd be like, well, I don't even know what we should put in it. It's not, it's better just to wait till, we figure out what you can and cannot regulate and all the regulations are out. There's a model ordinance. The league, I think, will help put that together. And then it will be a lot simpler because you can just, it'll be kind of a safe ordinance that you can take and know that, it's not going to get challenged because it's been tested.
If they don't get their act together, will they allow cities to extend the moratorium?
No.
So if they don't get their act together, we still can't keep delaying it.
No.
Well thought out process.
You talked about liability. What kind of liability would the city have?
In terms of not doing a moratorium?
No, in terms of not doing it and having edibles and pot.
I mean, I think the city might run into problems with if you try to enact some regulations and then we find out later that we shouldn't have put those regulations in place because the state regulations that they haven't even come up with contradict that or, I think that's kind of the concern, I guess. Okay. Because, somebody could start a business and then all of a sudden,
My concern is, I think kind of your concern, they don't have their act together, so by 2025, they still don't have everything in place, and now all of a sudden, our moratorium is gone.
Yeah.
So, I guess my question is it wise to start the moratorium now, or because we can do a moratorium for for a whole year, right?
Yes, yeah, you could start. You could have the moratorium they're letting you have the extra long one, the 18-month one.
And that's unusual because normally
Yes,
it's just a year.
exactly. So that one's going to end on January 1st, 2025.
Okay, so
it doesn't matter when you start it.
When you started. Okay, that's what I was wondering. So the 18-month is only this one-time deal for this.
It's a one-time kind of
Okay.
deal, so like the sooner you start it, the better.
Okay.
So
Okay.
let's start the moratorium.
Yeah.
Let's just do that and wait and see what the state does.
And then it's a question of, on top of that, you haven't done it yet, so you still have the option of doing the THC moratorium.
Well, then we
and
should.
that'd be a 1 year.
And that would be a 1 year. So question is, are we premature in doing, so we'll do the 18. I think we should do the 18
Yeah, I
month.
think so too.
Yes.
We're all in,
Yes.
okay, moratorium on the cannabis. Should we wait on the
One of each.
cakes, on the edibles?
Great source of
To do a moratorium on that?
I mean, I don't know, you've waited this long, but yet, like I said, it's getting past, that's what this other city I represent is worried about. They're like, well,
How do you want to do
it was fine.
Hold on, guys. Hold on. Just a minute.
It was, this other city I represent, they just passed the THC moratorium now. And they said what they were worried about was that basically right now they're going to give it to the Department of Health like temporarily, and then they're going to pass it over to the Office of Cannabis Management in the fall. And so they didn't like how it was just kind of being shuffled around, so they just said let's just do away with it during that interim period so we don't have to be
That seems
concerned
like
about
a good
it.
idea, particularly before McIntoons
Yeah.
gets up and starts
Yeah.
inventory.
I would say do both.
And also, Buddy Boy has a on and off sale license as well. So I think that they could.
Oh,
Yeah, the off sale they could theoretically then sell the edibles
Yes,
right
let's
now.
do that moratorium now.
Sure. I mean,
So you would do it'd be a concurrent moratorium. The THC one would be a year, and then the other one would run until January 1st of 2025.
okay.
And the earliest we can put the 18-month one on is July 1st because that's when that particular piece of legislation goes into effect.
Okay.
So you'd probably do that at, I think you would just have the one July meeting, and we
Yeah.
have to do a public hearing on that.
But we don't have to notify it. Is that correct? Oh, no, that's for the rules. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what we recommend, they have nothing in the rules about like, usually when you write a statute, you say like public hearing, you got to publish it, you got to notify.
Right.
They don't have any, it just says public hearing.
Oh, so we don't have to notify.
But
No.
I guess what I would recommend is you publish it in the paper and give 10 days notice, just like, you do with everything else.
But, okay, so here's my concern. Maybe it's not a good concern, valid concern, but what if, let's just say Buddy Boys gets wind of this and quickly wants to do something before the public hearing, is then what?
Well, we actually had that come up in another city, and I guess what we said was that, basically the moratorium, it's not a
Well,
legal
the edible
non-conform.
moratorium can go into effect immediately, right? Because that's already.
But we still have to have a public hearing.
You could do the edible
do-
one at the next meeting
Yeah, we can have the edible public
with
hearing.
no public, you don't have to have a public hearing on that one.
Oh, okay.
You
So
could
we-
throw that one on to the next meeting, and then you
Okay.
could do the public hearing at the July meeting for the longer one.
The
Okay.
cannabis one, though. No,
Yeah, the cannabis
not.
one.
wouldn't there be a window between July 1st of when?
But that one we're not as concerned about because the licensing isn't.
You
even-
can't get a license
You
right
can't
now
get a
for that.
license.
But then after July 1st, I mean, I don't think they'll get it together.
Yeah, right.
There's no way anybody's going to get a license probably for the cannabis business probably to like September or October. So
Okay.
just because, like I said, they have a website, but they don't have anything else. So it's going to be a while. So I don't think you have to be that concerned, but you might as well get it in place because you can
Right.
only have it until January 1st of 2025 anyway. So it's not like, because I was like, well, can you just wait and then kind of wait till it's right about time that they're going to like start issuing them and then put it on?
That's
and then you
what
can
I
stretch
was
it out.
Yeah.
thinking we could do.
Yeah, but you
but,
can't do
Apparently
that.
we can't.
So
but then it's, yeah.
you might as well just, at the first most convenient opportunity, which would probably be your July meeting, just do it then. And
Okay.
then you'll have had time to do the public hearing. But in the meantime, if you wanted to do the THC one, you could just do that at the second meeting in June.
Okay, that's what we'll do.
And there's no public hearing required
Okay.
for that.
Okay, so that's
Yes.
what we'll do.
Sounds good.
And I'm sure we'll talk about this more.
I mean, I'm so surprised that, I'm not surprised that our governor wants to do this, but I specifically was looking at research that was coming from like the University of Colorado, because it would be progressive, and the professors there I would think would be, they were all saying this is not a good thing. And the Stanford lawyer, Robert Corey, there's 5 pages here of him just listing one thing after another, how he so regrets having been behind this movement, and that, he just lists so many statistics. So I'll leave this for all of you to look at, but or Google Robert Corey. But I think it would be a great thing to educate our community about these things that he states has happened to Colorado because of the legalization of marijuana. Things have gone off the rails, so
Okay.
I'm against it, obviously.
All right. All right, so we'll bring that back at our next meeting, and then at our meeting in July, and like I said, we'll have more discussions on it. And so we're going to move on to the St. Bonnie Joint Cooperative Agreement, contract for fire service discussion.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. I anticipate Council Member Refkin will also chime in on some of this stuff, as she was present at the last meeting that we had, the advisory meeting that we had with St. Bonnie. So I'll pull up that staff report so I can see. And just to recap, we're going to talk about the next meeting because of Juneteenth. I sent out a survey to reschedule that, and that's when that THC edible moratorium will be considered. So after we get through this, then
Okay.
we'll talk about that. Regarding the St. Bonnie Joint Cooperative Agreement and Contract for Fire Service, that's the name of the agreement that we have with them. Essentially, the members, Laketown Township, Watertown Township, Minnetrista, are all advisory members of this committee. So we have meetings twice a year, and we provide guidance on budget. We don't have any voting. We can't vote on it, but we can provide guidance, and St. Bonnie can either take it or leave it. So in this situation, what we're looking for, and I'll kind of go through the details, is potentially developing a contract amendment that kind of clarifies a couple aspects of the contract that have come to light in the last, I guess, year. So, and they're kind of financial in nature. So I'll start off with the first one that we've been talking about for probably, I don't know, almost a year, something like that. So there was a truck that a truck that's getting replaced right now, and the proceeds from this truck, generally you have the option to either trade it in, or you can sell it outright for cash that usually gets used to offset the cost of the new piece of equipment. So Rescue 12 was sold, I believe via auction or some site online that the fire departments use. It was sold for $18,700 last year. The proceeds for that fund, or proceeds from that sale, were deposited in the St. Bonifacius General Fund versus the Fire Department Capital Fund. Now, in the agreement, St. Bonifacius is the fiscal agent. They have fiscal authority. They can basically do what they want with funds. So this has come up, and it's been kind of talked about, I think, both from the fire chief. I think he's the one who kind of brought it up to the group. And then it's been talked to by the group to some of a council member at St. Bonifacius, and then also the mayor as well. So they're kind of aware of it. They weren't really aware of it when they passed the budget, is what kind of happened. So, in the group, when I say the group in the memo, I'm talking about Laketown Township, Watertown Township, and and Minnetrista. So the 3 advisory council members. So.
And St. Bonnie.
And St. Bonnie, but we're kind of, I think the group of 3 are going to come up with an amendment proposal to St. Bonnie to consider, is kind of the process that we're going to look at here. So,
Their council member thought that was a good idea.
Yeah.
Correct.
One of them thought it was a good idea that it gets looked at.
correct, yeah. So, and just in general, like globally, we want to make sure that we're kind of sensitive. We want to make sure we are good partners. They're good partners, and we want to do this cordially in this sense. So. So the group at the meeting, agreed in principle to formally request that those funds, that $18,700, get transferred back into the fire department capital outlay fund. And then those will go to offset future capital purchases for the St. Bonifacius Fire Department. The second aspect is the Western Area Fire Training Academy, also known as WAFTA. There's a fund in there that has some money in it, I think around $96,000. While we're doing this amendment, it was proposed, I believe, by Councilmember Refkin to kind of just clarify if there's any excess funds left over after that WAFTA site is cleaned up,
Yeah.
which who knows when that's going to happen. That could be
This has been talked about for 20 years.
Exactly. So, but if there is some maybe outside federal funds that get used to clean that up someday, if there's a balance in there, the idea is that the contract would address where the balance of those funds would go, which we would propose those to go back into the fire department capital outlay fund. And then lastly, the third piece is the fire equipment sales. So this would just clarify in the future, it's expected, and it will contractually document it, that any future equipment sales would then go into the capital outlay fund. So it just kind of clarifies it to make sure that, maybe this doesn't happen again in the future where, a piece of equipment that was purchased by the advisory committee, those funds remain in the fire department. It makes a lot of sense. So I just want to make sure that the group is aware of these things. And, what I'm proposing is working with legal counsel to kind of draft these and then bring a proposal to our city council. Once our city council evaluates it and possibly takes action on it, then it would go to Laketown Township, Watertown Township for them to do that as well. And then there would likely be a presentation or something at the St. Bonifacius City Council to request this contract amendment formally and see what they have to say. So I think it'll be pretty, I don't know, I can't speculate if it'll be supported or not, but it makes sense. I think it makes sense to me and a lot of others. So that's the gist of it. I'm here to entertain any questions if there are any.
I have some just basic questions of how this works. Do we just pay for services and then there's a capital fund that say they need a new truck or something? Then what's the mechanism for deciding we need to kick in more money? Or
They do a budget and then they divide it up based on the percentage of calls. So right now we're 70-something% of our budget we pay.
okay.
Yeah.
The market
So
value.
then they have a capital outlay plan just of when they expect the vehicles to be replaced, and then we get that, and then that goes forward with the budget. So
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there's a standard formula. I don't know if it's the League of Minnesota Cities has a formula that they use that takes into account the value of the property in your city that they're serving, and then it also uses the calls. So then it calculates it. Past calls.
Yeah.
And is that the same as what we have with Mound? Is it the same agreement? Okay.
It's
pretty similar. Yeah.
similar, yeah.
Okay.
Very similar, yeah. And I think we're at 72%.
I think it's right around there.
72% of the overall operational costs.
Okay. Thank you.
And the fire department would like the money back too.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
the thing.
I'm sure
The
they
chief,
would.
the chief thought that 18,000 was going back into his budget, and it didn't. The one comment, I don't know if we can do this. If we can specify how much we're going to allow the WAFTA fund to keep growing, can we put like a cap on what? Because I mean, if this keeps going 20 years, I don't think we need $200,000.
Do they keep putting money in it?
We put $7,000 in it every year. The 2,000 of that is for like the upkeep of the area, like the grass cutting and those type of things, and then the 5,000 goes into the fund. So I don't know if we can put a cap on how much, because if this just keeps going and going, and then also make sure we specify that the interest from that account is also put back in,
right.
in the contract, that we cover the interest.
We could, and I think, and I could clarify this, but Mound also puts money
Puts
into
money.
the WAFTA fund,
Yeah.
and I believe they've stopped.
They've stopped from talking with Chief at 2 meetings ago, maybe it was 3 at this point. And then he also said that the overall group also has a huge fund, and he thought that money was nearing like they had more than enough too. So like possibly Bonnie could stop saving because there's lots of money elsewhere. So I don't know if we want to cap it to a reasonable amount, but I mean.
Yeah,
Like 95,000.
Well, we can do next year's too, but like $100,000 in reserve seems like a good amount of money for.
But I do think that's,
you're correct that we should put, number one, a cap on it, and then also say what will happen with that money at the end.
With
does
interest.
it? Yeah, with
Okay.
interest. How does it? It should be in a separate account. I mean, I know if Brian was doing this, he'd have it in a separate.
You'd have it in a great account and just be watching it growing. Like, we can't touch that money. Why?
Yeah, so WAFTA is in its own supposed account. I haven't looked at I haven't looked at the audit or the budget documents or anything like that to ensure that, but it's supposed to be in a separate account.
Okay.
Completely separate. So, so just to clarify, cap WAFTA maybe at 100,000, and then put something about the interest earnings, and maybe that's the cap it, and then the interest earnings continue to get that fund to grow a little bit
Right.
over time.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Likely we'll see something maybe early summer, June. Well, we're in June, July maybe, August, and we'll get this rolling. The idea would be that we could get this enacted potentially or evaluated by all three parties and St. Bonifacius by the end of this year.
How often does Laketown Township board, I think they're called boards, and Watertown Township boards meet? Because I don't think township boards meet very often.
I think monthly at most. I think they have claims that they have to pay
Okay.
generally monthly,
Okay.
but we can see when they.
All right,
when
I
they
just didn't want, I was thinking they only met quarterly or something like that, and so
Yeah.
if that was the case, we'd have to, yeah, but anyhow, okay. All right.
Okay.
And then schedule.
Yeah, so schedule. So I think everybody's aware that the state of Minnesota adopted Juneteenth, which is June 19th every year, to start this year in 2023. That just so happens to be a city council meeting. I did send out a survey to the group about what times will work best for most. The date that came up was June 26th. From 5 to 6:30 because there's a planning commission meeting that night as well. So that was the most common date. There was one that had a maybe on there, but everybody else could meet. The other question is we need to kick off the budget process cycle as well. So we would like to start the meeting and do a work session from 4 to 5 that day as well. And then we have an hour to kind of get the budget kind of questions
Well,
planted.
Okay, I have a question though, before you go there. The 27th was also an option, but you said that didn't work for some people?
Correct.
Signing contracts with all the unions.
Correct. It was. Yeah. I don't know who it was actually, but
might have been me.
I don't remember. I know I put a maybe on a few of them, but I don't remember which one.
so here's the results. I mean, the 27th we had Lisa and Brian on Tuesday.
Oh, only 2 on Tuesdays?
Yep.
I mean, I could do Tuesday.
And then Kathleen was for the later option at 7 to 8:30 on Tuesday. Was a maybe.
So you're suggesting to start at 3 on the 20, or at 4 on the 26th?
4 on the 26th, correct.
Or we'd have to move it to Tuesday.
Potentially, but we kind of need Brian here for the budget kickoff stuff.
Oh, so Brian can't
Well,
do the
I
27th?
think I could make the 27th.
I can
leave.
do the 26th. I was the only maybe on it. So, I mean, if everyone else, I can make Monday work.
Yeah, 27th. So
Christopher
more
won't be
people want to do
thrilled, but
26th than the 27th.
Yeah. I mean, that's fine. I can make it work. Christopher won't be thrilled, but I can make it work.
Well, I mean, it doesn't matter to me. Does it work?
I can do both.
Does it work
Yeah, I can
earlier
too.
for, Peter, does that work earlier for you? I mean, at
Well,
4
as late in the
o'clock?
day as possible is good for me, but if that's what works, let's do it.
Because we have to do it earlier because of the planning commission
Right.
meeting then.
Yeah, no, I
Okay.
think we should go ahead.
Let's do it.
4 o'clock?
Yeah.
4 o'clock on the 26th. Okay, that works for you?
As well as it's going to work at any point that's not when it was originally scheduled. Yeah.
Okay, exactly. And the 20th, we decided that wouldn't work, right? Because,
Correct. Yeah. So the 20th, there was a conflict that Tuesday
yeah.
because I believe you potentially
I
have a.
had potential, yeah, no, I haven't heard.
committee.
So,
And then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of that week are the LMC conference.
Right. Because I haven't heard back, so I'm assuming nothing happened there. So I would be open on the 20th. But that kind of screws everybody up.
Let's do
Okay,
the 26th.
so 26th. All right,
Monday, 4
26th.
o'clock.
So
Four
I can't
o'clock.
imagine it'll be very long.
the meeting likely won't be.
It's got to end, so it can't be.
If that helps.
Yeah, that's a finite.
There's a hard stop.
It's
Yeah.
hard stuff.
Yeah. So the planning commission meeting starts at 7. You know, we could we could maybe start the work session at 4:30 and go to 5:30 and then have the meeting start at, if it helps.
Half hour.
Councilmember
That's
Vick.
I
Okay.
think, yes, yeah.
So 4 o'clock is okay. So
4
4 to 5 for the work session, 5 to 6:30 for the regular meeting. Okay.
5 to our meeting, right?
What?
5 to 6 or what is 6:30?
Yeah.
Whenever.
Probably 5 to. I looked at the way the agenda is kind of setting up right now. It'll probably be
5 to 6.
yeah. We'll probably be out here by 6, and then whoever's here for the planning commission meeting will just have to come back
Ouch.
Or stay.
or stay.
So then doesn't it just make sense to start an hour later?
Yeah.
Let's just start an hour later.
Well, I'd say maybe 4:30.
It'll help
I don't
Peter out
know
anyway.
if I'd go
Then
to
Peter doesn't have to rush.
4:30 to 5:30, just in case. You're not saying I'll go at 5, right? And that might get a little tight here.
5, 6.
Yeah.
Would be.
I mean, mate.
I mean, I think, why don't we wait and see what's on the agenda and start it as close to the, or have it end as close to the planning commission meeting as possible,
Yeah.
but leave us enough time, you know, if there's nothing on the agenda, then yeah, like, move
Okay.
everything back. But if the agenda is big or the work session's gonna be big with the budget discussion, then leave the time in there.
That makes the most sense.
You know, just plan on meetings starting between 4 and 5.
And you know, if we don't get through that, we can also put on the agenda things that maybe could wait, because then we can always move them to the next meeting.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good plan. I don't even know if we have a business item right now on there.
THC.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we have the public hearing.
Which might take you an hour and a half.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're gonna start at 5.
Well, that's just the edible one, right?
Yeah, but yeah, I spent a lot of time on last Monday night's meeting in some other city.
Oh. Well, this is just the public hearing. So, Sarah, do you think it's gonna take a while to do the public hearing?
There's no public hearing.
Yeah.
It's just a matter. I mean, like I said, last Monday night I was at another city, or actually 2 Monday nights ago, and it kind of blew up. And then there were a lot of people there from the public, and there were lots of questions, and yeah, it turned into this.
We have
Big
a
deal.
community that likes to ask questions.
Was it more positive or more against, for it or against it?
Well, they had actually a couple of businesses that had already started up, so they had an attorney there, and there were questions about that. And then they're a charter city, so there was a charter commission member there, and she was concerned about the way that they were doing the moratorium. So that issue wouldn't come up here, at least.
We'll take a look at it, and at the earliest we'll start at 5. Latest would be probably 5:30 or sorry, 4.
4.
Latest would be 4:30 or 5. So
Yeah.
we'll try to dial it in to make it as efficient as we can.
Yeah, we don't have any businesses currently that are selling or have, you know,
You don't
so.
think?
Well, if they are, they should have come to the city and gotten a CUP at least, correct? So they would be operating illegally, I mean,
Oh.
Would they
technically.
have needed one?
I don't think they
I
would
don't
have
think they
needed
would have
one.
needed one.
Really?
Yeah.
For operating a business in the city?
Do you need a CUP? I guess it's a David Abel question.
To operate, if it's in the business district, no.
We have no business district.
Well, I mean, a commercial
Well, what
areas.
if you look at, let's just use Buddy Boy because there's not many options.
Yeah.
But like if they were already selling it, we wouldn't need to know. We don't require licenses for it,
Correct.
so they could just sell it with their
Yeah.
sandwiches type thing. Like it's not liquor, so they
Yeah,
don't
they could
need
be
a
selling
Side
separate.
dish.
They could be selling it right now.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
wouldn't know. Or Burl Oaks for that matter. They could have a side business in the golf shop. We wouldn't know. It's not required. There's no license, so who knows what the
So then-
minimal businesses are doing, but they couldn't be doing it.
So let me ask you this, so if, let's just say that scenario were correct, and we put a moratorium, they would already be operating, so wouldn't they be eliminated from the moratorium?
Not necessarily. We've opined in other cities that under our police powers, that because they always say, well, we're a legal non-conforming use. But we've actually argued that we're not doing that moratorium under the zoning, we're doing it under our police powers. So therefore they can't operate.
Oh, okay.
And then for the meeting itself, because we're changing it, does it need to be a special meeting note called by the mayor, or can we just as a group move the meeting?
I think you can just move the meeting.
Okay.
I just announce it
At the regular
this
meeting.
Okay.
Just let everybody know and
Yeah, 'cause there's enough
put it on the
notice.
calendar.
It's
There
getting
is.
later when we get closer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so just remind me, or,
Yeah.
okay. So how long did that discussion take then?
It
An
was-
hour?
It was about an hour.
Okay.
But it's a much larger city and they have a lot of businesses, and then they had some that were selling CBD products, and the city was actually looking to place the moratorium on trace amounts of THC, which we had recommended they don't do that for this reason, because like the lotion and all that kind of stuff,
Oh,
you know, it's like we don't need to be
Yeah.
shutting those people down. So they were there because they were like, that's my whole business. I sell the CBD oil or whatever. And, you know, you're going to shut me down. And one guy had just signed a lease for 10 years. And he had 3 kids. And, you know, so then they started to feel sorry for him. So then they said, yeah, we're not going to do that. We're just going to do, it's like I think it's 1% or 3% or more of THC is when it kind of gets to be a, you know,
it's kind of like 3-2 beer.
yeah. So that was the level they went with. So I'm assuming that's what this council would want too, because everything else is under that level is federally allowed under federal law.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's kind of already allowed anyway. So
Yeah.
I don't know why we would put a ban on that.
Okay. All right. So the time, you'll let us know on the time.
Yes.
And we do have to post it, so we'll have to know by Wednesday of the week prior.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So then, any other questions? You sure? Then is there a motion to adjourn?
So,
Thank you. Is there a second?
second.
Thank you. Ann, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes 5-0. That's it.